Hello and welcome to my top 25 strategy game deals for the relatively quick Steam Autumn sale running now through October 6th. Let's take a look. Let's begin with a record-breaking discount for Old World. This 4X turn-based historical strategy game released in 2022, and in this Steam sale it is 90% off. Down to, and regional pricing will vary, sometimes quite a lot, but down to roughly $3 or $4. This strategy game, developed by Mohawk Games and published by Hooded Horse, is a real special gem. It really walks a fine balance between standard 4X gameplay and the kind of grand strategy, relationship building, storytelling that you would expect from a game like Crusader Kings 3. We'll touch on both the CK franchise as well as Civilization as we move through the video, but I really wanted to start with Old World because it is a gem, often overlooked, a brilliant 4X strategy game, and for the price that it's at in this unexpected sale, what a winner. Let's move through and talk about some, maybe not so much of a winner to begin with, but then we will get there. This is the Civilization franchise, and I have 3 recommendations for you. Firstly, because I play a lot of Civ, and Civ 7 is the latest one, I thought I would mention here that Civilization 7 is 30% off. The best discount we've seen. Obviously, the game only released back in February of this year, so 30% off is actually pretty good, but it's still going to set you back about $50. If you've been dying to pick this one up or wanting to pick it up, now is clearly the best time to do so. I don't think you need any of the DLC. However, my Civilization recommendations actually take a slightly different form. This time around, Civ 5 has received a whopping 75% off discount, bringing it down to about $6-ish, give or take. And actually, the same is true for Civilization 6. They are both fantastic, highly polished Civ games. While Civ 5 may be showing its age, over 10 years old, Civilization 6 is at least a little bit more modern, right? At just 5 or 6-ish years old. Both of them are great games. My recommendation would be that you pick up them as well as their core DLCs. So with Civ 5, we're talking about Kings and Right to Rule. With Civilization 6, we're talking about the expansions like Gathering Storm. The extra DLC Civs, maybe not so much needed. Either way, some great Civ deals on the classic Civ games, including, by the way, a little extra shout out here to Civ 4 Colonization. Another great deal there. Speaking of classic games, though granted not as old as Colonization, at 75% off, it's the original Endless Legend, which I always thought was a pretty good-looking strategy game. And now that I look back at it after playing the new one, I've got to admit maybe it is showing its age just a little bit. But nonetheless, it's a turn-based fantasy strategy game with a whole load of lore behind it. And frankly, it's a strategy game that I've begun to appreciate a lot more in recent times. And that's actually, I've got to be real with you, largely due to the fact that the sequel has come out. So in another strange move, I'm also going to recommend Endless Legend 2 at just 20% off. This one is still relatively expensive, right? $35-ish to $40. And that's obviously because it only came out like a couple of weeks ago at the time of recording this video. And, disclaimer, it's still in early access. And while I have some critiques around some elements of the UI and its relatively limited number of factions, it is a very enjoyable 4X fantasy strategy game. It's buried in lore, and it uses a fascinating mechanic of tidefall, of literally the map becoming this storm-laden world, the tides becoming violent, and then they move out, and the world expands just a little bit more. It happens a couple of times throughout the game, and it's super fun. A really brilliant approach to eras and ages here in Endless Legend 2. And while the number of factions are very limited, just these 5 you can see on screen, with the custom faction creator coming at some point during the early access, I've got to say they are filled with flavor. Asymmetrical, like nobody's business, and loads of fun to play. If you've got the extra cash and you don't mind EA, this is a goodie. Equally good, and in a change-up of our pace, this is Plate Up. At 75% off, this little indie game gem is down around $5. It's a co-op management game, similar to the likes of Overcooked or Overcooked 2. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the general premise. Design a restaurant, choose the layout, staff it yourself, prepare the meals that are on the menu, again designed by you, and beat wave after wave, or day after day, of customers, obviously getting procedurally more difficult. There are a lot of roguelite elements in here as well. Everything from the ingredients, the menu that you're using, through to how you design your restaurant, with some short-term challenges also adding a lot of replayability. This game is arguably best played with friends. So if you've got a few of those and you've got $20 spare, I can highly recommend a long session of PlateUp. Next, another fairly rapid change of pace. This is Sins of a Solar Empire 2, and it's one of the less generous discounts in my video here, at just 35% off, down around $30 US. This is our also first Space 4X game, and it's a very good one. Stellaris is an obvious recommendation when it comes to Space 4X games. Galactic Civilizations 4, another good one, and another favourite of mine. Sins of a Solar Empire 2 is slightly more overlooked, but honestly, I think it deserves a little bit more credit. It's an RTS game, so a step away from our turn-based titles that we've been looking at so far, and it's a sci-fi game with a whole load of lore and flavour. It also has quite a few DLC collections, recently one just released, actually a couple of weeks ago at the time of recording. Earlier this year there was also the Paths to Power DLC. I would suggest that you just start with the base game. There's a huge amount of content here, going out, finding planets, settling them. It's got some wonderful 4X elements around how you design and build those out to get your resources, and a huge amount of replayability. I can't recommend it enough. Let's keep the real-time strategy gravy train rolling with a classic throwback, Element TD2. Element TD2 is 55% off, brings it down to around $6 US, and it's a really cool classic tower defense game. It has some great multiplayer, though I've spent most of my time in it in single player. It also has a DLC, which for a couple of extra dollars is actually a pretty good pickup, designing your own maze for your maps. The premise here is all about elements. As you move through wave after wave of creeps, defeating them as you go, you'll unlock the ability to spec up into certain elements. Light, dark, water, fire, nature, earth. As you do, you'll unlock unique towers, sometimes blending the elements together. So no two playthrough is the same. It's a classic tower defense experience, and a very solid one. If you've got a few bucks and you like tower defense, I would pick it up. I would also recommend, for a more modern experience, Tower Dominion, at a slightly less generous, as a result, 25% off discount. It's still fairly cheap, at low teens US dollars. Released in 2025, Tower Dominion is obviously another tower defense game. The key difference here is that you sort of build out the actually entire map and the pathways that the enemies follow as you go, placing down tiles and shifting the direction of the very world that you're building in. Combine that with sort of obviously expected tower defense mechanics like upgrading your gear, choosing your towers, choosing different weaponry, and how effective it will be. Hopefully one of these two tower defense options has something for you. They're both fairly cheap pickups. I like them both. Let's move on to another game I like, haven't covered in a long time, Victoria 3. Actually, a very good discount in this sale at 70% off. Victoria 3 continues to receive very meaty free updates, as it has done since it launched a few years ago. It launched to a mixed reception across the board, though I was always a fairly big fan of this largely economic simulation of a Victorian-style strategy game. Obviously, there's a huge amount of depth here. There's also a lot of history, right? A lot of lore, real-life lore. Since it released, it's received a lot of paid DLC as well as those free updates. My recommendation would be, for new players anyway, that you slot in at the base game about $15 US. It can feel quite complicated for new players, and rightly so. I'd encourage you to take your time, slowly pick it up, slowly get used to the base game before you reach out into any of the extra DLC. It's a great, grand strategy game, and if you haven't played it yet, now might be the time, though there are plenty more sales to come at the end of the year here as we move through to Mechabellum, an entry that I have to be honest, I actually toyed with cutting from this video, but when it came out, this strategic, almost sort of auto-battler was a real favourite of mine. It released about a year ago, and the premise is essentially build some big, powerful mechs, upgrade them, synergize between them, place them down, and watch them go at it against your enemy or enemies. The reason why I say I hesitated on it is because recent patch updates, I believe, have messed with the metagame a little bit, made the game a little bit too predictable, a little bit too linear. And it's such a shame, because the units, the weaponry, the mechs are awesome. And as far as auto-battlers go, as far as tactical strategy games go, like I say, it was one of my favourite ones. I just caution you slightly that the recent metagame and the recent updates have tainted this one just slightly. But again, it's a reasonable discount and a fairly cheap pickup at about $10 US. For another cheap pickup, in fact, even better deal at 80% off, around $3 or $4 US, it's Hexarchy. This is a blend of 4X strategy game with DECK building. Build up your hand and broader deck of cards, and this will determine the kind of units, tile improvements, buildings, etc. that you can place. It's a quick, fast-paced game, hexagonal map, honestly so much fun. It's quite different, right? You can choose which cards you wish to save and which ones you wish to throw away. You get your yield, you can choose to spend it on certain things or go hard out into military and try and rush your opponent down. No two games of Hexarchy are quite the same, and the weekly challenges or daily challenges or what have you that they have here are super fun too. Easily a recommendation from me here at just a couple of dollars. Equally recommended, but for a slightly different reason, Yield Fall of Rome is another kind of 4X game, a little bit arcadey, focused on fast gameplay, quick games. This one, though, doesn't have the deck building element that Hexarchy did. Instead, perhaps more of a traditional experience, with clear, defined victory conditions, and that same sort of hexagonal map that, if you're anything like me, you will know and love. Again, this game is focused on a particular period in history, though this one arguably has slightly more flavoursome factions. It also has a richer and deeper campaign, a single-player experience. Perhaps Yield Fall of Rome is just slightly better suited toward that. Though, if you're playing multiplayer, I'm sure either of them will be fine. Asynchronous multiplayer features here as well if you want to take that quick experience to the next level and stretch it out across many days. The next entry on my list will step away from 4X historical strategy and more into the simulation field. Here we have Planet Coaster 2, which could have easily been Planet Zoo, because to be frank with you, I like a lot of the same things between the two games. They are rich and detailed simulation games. Super fun. In this case, of course, we're designing a theme park. Now, when Planet Coaster 2 came out just slightly under a year ago, it came out to quite mixed reviews, right? It was a good game, but it wasn't great. It had many issues. Now it has actually lifted its game quite a lot. In a similar way to a game that I've been covering recently on the channel, Art History Untold has done, the free patch updates that have rolled out for Planet Coaster 2 over the last few months or so have generally been very good. Performance has improved, there are more map assets than before. It's a fun game. I would recommend it to you if you like designing roller coaster parks. If you like city builders, well, we're not going to talk about City Skylines 2 at 20% off, it's not quite worth our time just yet, but Against the Storm definitely is. A 50% off discount is quite generous for this overwhelmingly positively reviewed roguelite city builder as well. Brings it down to about 12 or 13-ish US dollars. The premise here is you, my friend, are a viceroy working for the Queen, managing a roguelite, as you can see, different events, different challenges, city. As you move through and explore the different glades, you'll find extra enemies, resources, etc. as you expand out your city. And you can expand out beyond just the one, indeed stretching out across a rather large map should you be able to survive. For there's quite a difficulty curve here. Particularly early on, I found it was a relatively difficult city builder to learn because you're sort of fighting against this time pressure. Literally fighting, as the name would suggest, against the storm. If you like city builders, you like roguelike games, this one is absolutely one not to miss. Next up, a classic recommendation, it's XCOM 2. 90% off, one of the best, if not the best, turn-based tactical shooter of all time. Here I would recommend you get the base game as well as much of the DLC as you possibly can. The chosen DLC will make the game a little bit more difficult though, so bear in mind if you're new to this genre, starting with the base game is fine. Or perhaps you could start with my next recommendation in this list as well, not to get too far ahead of ourselves. But this is great, right? Build up a team, select their gear, send them into the round-based, turn-based strategic combat within these missions, fighting against the alien Scourge. But what happens if the alien Scourge wins, kind of loses? What if they work with us? Well, fast forward 5 years later, after XCOM 2, and you have Chimera Squad. Again, great discount for what is actually by default a cheaper game anyway. Chimera Squad is a little bit more of a, some people might say, critically, a little bit more of a sort of mobile gamey-esque version of XCOM. It's more modern, and it does do things a little differently, right? Of note, its breach mode when you're entering a level is super fun. The premise here is kind of human alien soldiers, so you get to play around with some more kind of fantasy sci-fi alien abilities on your own side of the fight here too. There are loads of things that I love about this. I feel like it's almost slightly overlooked, at least compared to XCOM 2. So my recommendation for you, dear viewer, if you like this kind of game and you're not already keeping yourself busy with the just released free-to-play Menace demo, check that out if you haven't already, Chimera Squad might just be the extra pickup you need, unless you're brand new to the franchise, in which case XCOM 2 is for sure the one to go with. My next recommendation is one that people often say, why don't you recommend these games? It's Age of Empires 2, the definitive edition. Great discount, classic game, still receiving updates, still receiving extra paid content should you wish to go the extra mile. This is the definitive, in my view, real-time strategy game. I remember playing the initial one on a free demo from a Kellogg's cereal box. Other cereal brands are available. And the definitive edition here on Steam for 2 really does deliver. If you're looking for something a little bit more modern, even though Age of Empires 2's definitive edition is perhaps the kind of best one, the critically most favorably reviewed version of this game, I really like Age of Empires 4. More modern, for sure. Slightly more interesting game design, I would argue, and certainly a more visually appealing, slightly more contemporary looking world. Age of Empires 4 is, I mean, let's be real, it's kind of the same gameplay, right? You get your wood, you get your stone, you build up your city, you build your units, and you go and fight the enemy. So ultimately, you can't really go wrong where you go within the franchise, though 2 and 4 have always and probably will always be my favorites. Now I've got 2 rapid-fire recommendations for you, both at 90% off record-breaking discounts. Firstly, we have Europa Universalis IV. Its sequel, EU5, is set to release in about 5 or 6 weeks. So if you haven't played it before, you're looking to familiarize yourself, now is arguably the best time to do so. It's pretty complicated, so get this grand strategy base game and go from there. Secondly, here in my rapid fire discounts, it's Anno 1800. Again, start with the base game and add more DLC if you wish. The reason why this game is here at 90% off for chump change is because Anno 117, Pax Romana, is also set to release in about 5 weeks. Good goodness, early November's going to be a busy time. Here, of course, it's not a historical grand strategy game from Paradox, but rather a city builder game. And if you somehow are unfamiliar with the Anno franchise, then you should know it's one of the most well-known city builder franchises there is, and this is their best game so far. Strap in, folks, because the rapid fire continues with Age of Wonders 4. We talked about Endless Legend 2 at the start of this video, and Age of Wonders 4 operates in a fairly similar space, though I would argue more RPG oriented. And definitely a lot more content here, not just paid DLC, but also the base game now a few years old, loads of free updates. This is a turn-based fantasy strategy game, and a brilliant one at that. Honestly, it's so fun. I'd recommend the base game to you for sure, and then maybe 1 or 2 DLC packs. If you like dragons, buy the dragon one. If you like giants, get the giants. Thankfully, you don't necessarily need any of them to enjoy this beautiful looking 4X game. My penultimate entry here is the grand strategy come sort of RPG, story building, kind of crazy grand strategy game. It's Crusader Kings 3. 70% off, by the way, a great discount for this game. I think we've potentially seen this before, but only equaled it. I don't think we've done better. As I mentioned, it's an RPG simulator. You can tell some crazy stories here. I would recommend for new players that you just grab the base game, because as well as kind of telling crazy stories, building up these interesting relationships, trying to sabotage, assassinate, marry, whatever your enemy, it's also a very complicated strategy game. So my advice for new players would be grab the base game, take it easy, and enjoy. And finally, with its sequel due to release in March 2026, here is Slay the Spire. For chump change, you can pick up this DECK builder. It's brilliant, right? Roll your way through, choose your path, defeat progressively more difficult enemies depending on the class you're playing. You'll have very different cards, actually, class by class. The differences here are profound. Work your way through, pick up some extra stuff, maybe decide to heal along the way, maybe not. It's all about difficult decisions and fighting enemies with the cards that you have. I'm very much looking forward to its sequel as well. Hey, that'll do us. Thank you so much for watching my recommendations here for the Steam Autumn Sale 2025. Again, it's a fairly quick one, so if you want to buy, get in now, or maybe hold off. There'll be a few more for the rest of this year for sure. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.